So far in W203, you've tried your hand at various forms of nonfiction, the more journalistic kind of slant and more of memoir kind of slant. This week, as we expand on those shorter writings, we're going to come face to face with the personal essay, which is kind of a writing that moves between the two, between journalism and straight up memoir. And we'll explore what its possibilities are. And I wanted to note a few challenges in this. And you've come face to face with those things already, right? Within your memoir, as you try to render a version of yourself from the past, right? What emerges there? Is it a more fictional or non-fictional I as you try to recall who you were in the past? The personal essay has some distinct defining elements to it that are close to the basic elements of fiction itself, as we described it in terms of literary nonfiction or literary journalism, that nonfiction writing here kind of borrows fictive techniques to tell non-fictional stories. And so just to note these from the outset, first, the subject matter of the personal essay is about personal experience. So part of that is the I that you put on the page. How do you render the world accurately? Do you render the world more accurately by trying to describe various scenes, characters, or points of conflict and chronicling those as accurately as possible, more like journalism? Or do you delve into yourself in a more kind of memoir-like fashion and try to explore the subjectivity and how you know the world through personal experience and through writing itself? In what ways does writing offer you the possibility of kind of grasping that world or remembering that world or recalling that world in the end? There's an open theme towards the personal essay that you can explore all kinds of basic, larger meanings within the personal essay. You can explore our family history, points of personal or cultural conflict, aspects of gender, faith or spiritual experience, the experience of loss or change, the influence of place and locality upon you. All these kinds of themes are open, as well as others. As you start to write, you might see one emerging within your own writing. There's a distinct informal tone that marks the personal essay, that quite often it will be ironic or self-deprecating in a way where the writer kind of pulls back from trying to make statements that are quote-unquote the truth with a capital T, that the writer kind of explores self in a more kind of whimsical way at times. There are moments of digression or exploration where the writer goes into deeper experience and tries to puzzle out those things, and is oftentimes kind of sobered by the attempt to try to do that on the page, the attempt to tell oneself non-fictionally. Fourth, there's a developing plot. As the plot develops, quite often in the personal essay, you'll see the writer kind of wrestling with deepening levels of honesty. So as you try to write these things down, how does the writing itself force you kind of face to face with that border between fiction and nonfiction? How do you tell yourself accurately, especially as you reconstruct a past self, someone you were 10 years ago or more, perhaps? And in terms of point of view, you're working through that first person I on the page. So the I is always going to be present. In composition class, you probably learned that you're not supposed to use that I on the page quite often. And instructors would push you to cut it out of your argument. As Henry David Thoreau says, there's always that first person that's speaking on the page. So here you're fully invited to bring the I onto the page and explore it. That leads us to the question of the I as a character here, right? So we can explore some psychological aspects of how this works out in autobiographical writing. First, in terms of subject matter, how do you write about an I in the end? What gives you the strength or the energy to write about that I and to describe that I, to recover that I of the past if you're writing memoir? Roland Barthes, the French critic, writes that only essay is an ambiguous genre in which analyses vies with writing. And so there's this kind of strange eye that works itself out experimentally in a personal essay. That, the part of the tension of the essay is kind of the question of, will you recover a full sense of yourself within the writing? Is the I available to you, and will you get there? Montaigne, who is seen by many as kind of the progenitor of the essay as a form, argued that in the beginning that myself is here on the page, entire and wholly naked, that you could get to that kind of I. But Scott Russell Sanders, a Midwestern writer, contemporary with us, argues that it's not the flesh and blood author that's the I on the page, but a simulacrum, a character. So when you put I on a page, what is that I? Is it really you, or is it simply a character that you're working with as you explore memory or explore the world? Here we can think about the more kind of various psychological spaces that are explored or invented within writing itself. I like that term voice here kind of comes in, right? That the I becomes a voice speaking on the page. It's self-styled, it's essayistic, that is, that it essays, right? It explores the world, or it explores a sense of persona. Voice becomes your kind of key to unlock that sense of exploration. Memory here is a psychological space that you're going to explore, that memory is oftentimes fragmented and in pieces, and can the I put memory back together? Can memory gather the detail, or can writing gather the details of memory in the end, put those fragments together to come up with a fuller, complete experience of the world? And do you see that experience of the world as fictional or non-fictional? In the end, the personal essay gives you freedom to explore that line. There are borders of self here as well, right? That sense of your own sense of personal limits about what you'll write about. Will you write about things that slightly embarrass you, or will you write about things where you feel like you've crossed some line in some ways? In what ways will the reader connect to that in the end? And you could also think here that the personal essay is kind of, in a way, it's kind of dramatic in a way, that you, as a writer, as an I, are exploring a series of masks in the end, right? That you move between these masks to kind of explore inherent points of internal contradiction, those kind of conflicts that you feel within yourself, where sometimes you're one character and sometimes you're another, right? When like when you come to school, you're the perfect student. When you go home, you're the and with your parents, you're the perfect child. And when you're with your friends, you're someone quite different than that, right? So in what ways does the writing give you the freedom to explore these various masks that you wear dramatically? A couple other points in conclusion, right? In what ways do you see writing here as a therapeutic experience? Does writing offer a way of kind of putting your memory back together in a kind of healing sense? Sanders writes in one of his essays, we can discover who we are through the search for words, right, to come more fully awake. So as you try to describe memory and try to put pieces back together, in what ways do you become more integrated and whole as a person? Is that possible through writing? And the other psychological aspect of writing I think is always interesting is how writing itself is kind of an obsessive activity, right? If you're recording a diary, you're obsessive about, you're trying to get everything down that you can in a way. In what ways does the personal essay kind of engage that sense of obsessiveness of getting everything down on the page as you describe that I? George Lukács says that with the essay, right, the writer ironically adapts himself to this smallness. So how do you fit an entire life onto the page in a way, you put an I on the page, you who've had so many experiences and has so many memories, how do you fit all of that experience onto the simple kind of 8.5 by 11 page in the end? There's kind of an obsessive tendency to focus on smaller and smaller aspects of experience as you write, to try to get down more and more to what the core or the root experience is within a memory. writing is also kind of a point of failure, right? That how do you deal with the inability to recall things or to describe them accurately? And is that also a part of the personal essay as a form that you are working against and within this sense of failure? And then finally, in what ways is the process of writing psychologically also obsessive, right? That is all writing in the end just about writing and trying to get things down on the page? Do you find yourself as you write becoming more and more frustrated, or do you find yourself being freed or liberated up to describe your past, to describe the world? In what ways is writing always about writing or trying to get this world and yourself down on the page? Look forward to reading your work, and thanks for going into this project of nonfiction. If you have questions, please let me know.